Hi, Geoff.
Mike, you're really feisty.
I'm back. I'm back, Geoff. And thank you for holding down the fort last week while I was in Tokyo.
Yeah, long trip, good time.
Yeah, easy trip actually, but you won't believe the people I run into in Tokyo. But I'll get into that in Strategy Suite. Um, and we're also going to be joined in Strategy Suite this week by Carlie Pochynok, who's a former ghost of the BC Legislature and haunted the communications rooms there back in the day. She's going to help us understand what's happening in BC politics this week, including and national politics. We're going to look at the aftermath of the federal budget vote, the 170 to 168 cliffhanger that happened on Monday. We're going to talk about the NDP Convention and Leadership Review. Geoff, you were there. We'll get your report from the front.
Right on.
The BC government is looking west. Apparently not looking to Brad West, but they're looking west. And Mark Carney went to Prince Rupert to rain down some major projects. So we'll talk about that, and we'll also have a quick chat about the remaining weeks of the legislative sitting. So a lot to talk about in Strategy Suite. But first, our guest this week is no stranger to Hotel Pacifico. In fact, he's practically a resident. Richard Zussman is here on his final day as a global BC reporter. He's hanging up his journalistic whatever they are, shoes or whatever you say that,
Notepad.
and moving on into another chapter in his life. And we thought we better get him in here for a chat about his career. And as our listeners know, Richard's been here many times before, and we're honored to have him join us today on this auspicious day in his life. Richard,
I think it
welcome.
I think it's the government's short-term rental policy that actually booted me out of the hotel. I think they need the space for actual paying guests, and so I've been legislatively booted out of Hotel Pacifico.
Uh,
Always great
I
seeing
thought you
both
were
of
in one of
you.
the social housing units that were.
Yeah.
I've
They're
never
getting rid of those
detected
too,
I've
aren't
never
they?
detected government interference at Hotel Pacifico, Richard. Don't worry.
Well,
Well,
it's called legislative interference, Jeff. You can't control what the legislation does. These are the
Yeah.
unintended consequences that exist in these sort of things. Your podcast is not immune from legislation having unintended consequences.
Okay. All
well,
right.
first of all, Richard, nice hat.
You have a nice hat too, Mike.
Yeah.
You and I have done this shtick before. Probably, when I look back at my career as a journalist, one of my favorite things was when the three of us sat down and did that incredible episode of Hotel Pacifico, going through every single riding leading up to the last election. Like
Yeah.
the two of you, I love the politics of this province, and the politics of this province is a combination of those 93 ridings, those MLAs. And so we wore our hats then. So I
Yeah.
thought it was fitting that we wear them again
You
today.
have
It
to go
was
back
your
and
idea.
look.
I'll give you credit for the idea, but I do like the sort of full circle moment that we're
I
completing here.
don't have a BC hat in my wardrobe, but I did wear this distinctive Zeusmania button, which was being distributed at the NDP convention to anybody who wanted them. So that is true celebrity status.
It
It's
means
very
going out on
very rare
top,
for a member of
Jeff.
the press gallery to get that kind of
Jeez.
affection and enthusiasm at an NDP convention.
I worried maybe I wasn't hard enough on the NDP considering I'm getting buttons, but it was a real nice honor from the party, and it's been really nice hearing from people across the political spectrum. Uh, and largely for me, it's about being thankful. Like I'm thankful for the opportunities I've been afforded as a journalist. I'm thankful for the team that I've worked with at Global BC. You guys got to be a part of that election night last year. You know how special it is. The team I've worked with at
Mm.
CKNW. And then, we'll walk down memory lane a little bit, but I've been at other places in my career, and I'm just really filled as I reflect on this, I'm filled with gratitude. The opportunities I've been given, the people I've met. You guys know this because you've worked in it, but I think people fail to understand sometimes politicians and those around it often are bigger than life, right? Like you watch them make big decisions, they pass laws, are on television every night, but they are human beings. And for me, this is saying goodbye to lots of people that I've had in my life for more than a decade, who I speak to, some of them every single day. And to move away from that into something new is saying goodbye to a really significant chapter of my life. So that's the toughest part here. It's the human beings from all political stripes that I'm saying goodbye to as I move on to something new. And I hope to keep so many of you in my life, but that's the tough part here. It's not the politics, it's not being on television, it's those interactions with the human beings that love our democracy and love our politics and love our province as much as the three of us do.
Well, how long were you working the press gallery beat?
So I got here in 2014. So I started at the CBC in 2013 with my friend and colleague Stephen Smart, who was here at the legislature, and he departed in 2014, and I started to
Didn't you
fill
have a
in.
stint before that though out in BC?
Not here at the legislature, and this
Oh,
is a
okay.
great story of Geoff and I. My first reporting job was at the Sun News Network, brand
Right.
new,
Yeah.
and they had a reputation that came with that news station, and one of the very few elected officials that would give the station any time was Vancouver City Councilor Geoff Meggs. And I've always been very appreciative of Geoff for that. He knows that, and I think
And who was
whatever
your
he
boss
thought
at
of a
Sun? Who
place,
was your
my
boss at
boss
Sun
was
News
Corey
Network?
Tenike. My
Corey
boss was
Tenike.
Corey
Yeah.
Tenike. So it's an incredible orbit in politics. So I actually came over here a few times for Sun News Network early in my career as they tried to figure out what, in essence, new media looked like, because they were one of the uh, s- starts of what we've seen in the US, the sort of consolidation of sending news towards those who have the same political ideologies that we do. Ezra Levant, it wasn't conservative enough for him. He moved on to Rebel News, the company that he runs. But yeah, Geoff always gave us a lot of time. Adrian Dix is the other one who gave us a lot of time at that point. A news
You were
station
you
you
were
didn't.
very conveniently located, Richard, in a studio next to a Tai Chi studio on Kingsway, as I
Yeah.
recall, And I was never really sure who was going to swing in from the right wing and try to clobber me during those interviews. But sometimes you were always very straightforward, but there was some wild throws that I had
Yeah,
to deal with.
you would get some interesting questions. That office on Kingsway, I remember I used to have to work a shift on the weekends. It started at 6 a.m. And I would arrive and unlock the gate at 6 a.m. I'd go up into the office. I'd do my hit at 6, I hit at 6:30, hit at 7, and then I wasn't going to be on again until 9. So I'd walk to the coffee shops on Main. And there was one time where I had forgotten to lock the gate behind me. And I pushed open the front door of the office and I heard a ugh, and I looked out, and there was a prostitute who had gotten up the stairwell and was uh, running away from somebody who was looking for her. So I contacted the police, and I hope the situation got resolved. But it was a reminder of the neighborhood that we were in there at Fraser and Kingsway.
Well, you went on from there to CBC,
I did.
as you
That was
mentioned.
quite of a turn of events, hey, Mike,
Yeah.
from Sun News to CBC. I think I'm
Yeah.
the only one who ever made that hard
Uh,
left turn.
a bit of a chameleon, I would say. And then that's when you joined the press gallery. You were
Yes.
working
Yeah. So
CBC
I
in
worked at the
Victoria.
CBC in Vancouver, uh, got to cover the tail end of that 2013 election, which I vaguely
Yeah.
remember was interesting. And then I started to get very interested in politics. Obviously, I'd always been. And when
Yeah.
Stephen left, I was filling in for him here in Victoria. So I was still in
Mhm.
Vancouver with our family. Our daughter was 2 at the time, and I was commuting back and forth. And then when the job was posted, I went through the application process and I started here at the legislature in 2014 with the CBC.
Right. So over a decade. So
Yeah,
over that decade, what are the events that stand out for you? Thinking back, all the things you
well,
covered.
paramount in all of them is that June night in 2017, when we had an historic confidence vote here
Yeah,
in this building. Like
I
you guys were,
recall.
you recall, you remember that, Mike? Um, well, your former boss had different recollections of that night when I was watching her on television yesterday, but that's a different story for a different day. But I still have this vivid memory. The one that stands out to me, the story I tell the most from that night was, as you know, there are very strict rules at the legislature around the galleries being able to make any type of noise when they're attending. And this was parliamentary session, right? This was a confidence vote. This was as high stake as it got.
Right.
And for 5 o'clock, on a weekday evening. I've never seen it so busy. It was full, and
Mm.
it was full largely with New Democratic and Green supporters. And they sat quietly and watched the proceedings happen. and they watched the confidence vote, and it was a series of 2 votes, as you'll both remember. And ultimately, when the second vote was complete, the government had been defeated, and Christy Clark was preparing herself to go from the legislature to Government House.
Mhm.
She was the last to leave the chamber. There was something set up where the BC Liberals had organized having all the MLAs go out first and line the hallways to throw support towards her as she was getting ready to go to Government House. What was happening inside the chamber was, because government had defeated, the speaker no longer was in charge. And in essence, the rules no longer applied. Somebody clued into this and they started to clap. They started to clap louder, and then they started to stomp. And when they started to stomp, as you guys know, this building is an old building,
Mhm.
built in the late 1890s. Great bones, but everything else is a little bit wobbly still. And Christy was walking out from behind the chamber, and I was standing right there. We were going live. So was Global, so was CTV. And I remember when that stomping started, the walls started to shake, and you could feel the door shaking. And Christy started to cry. It was this sort of moment of emotional release, historical significance, and then she emerges out, and 200 plus people are cheering for her wildly, thanking her for how far she'd guided the party. I think at the time there was still some hope she was going to go to Government House and convince the lieutenant governor to, overturn the results of the confidence vote or trigger another election. Obviously none of that happened, and so that moment stands out. And then the moment I got a phone call from someone telling me John Horgan has been invited to come to Government House. And I was the first person that knew this. And I was live with Ian Hannamansing on CBC. And I go and do a live hit, and I say, John Horgan is coming. He is going to be British Columbia's next premier. And then I turned to my gallery mates and I said, you guys probably weren't just watching on TV, but I just reported John Horgan's on his way here. And then I sat for 4 minutes, desperately hoping he was going to arrive
Yeah.
and that it was the right tip, and it was. And he emerges from the vehicle with Bob Dewar, uh, Sheena McConnell, and goes in and is offered to be the Premier of British Columbia. Like that to me, and it's in part what Rob Shaw and I wrote our book about. That is a defining moment. There are other many moments.
Mhm.
COVID, obviously,
Right.
broken into different pieces. Like I still remember that first press conference when there were cases outside of China. Like that stood out to a lot of people because there was a lot of confusion about what this virus was. And when we heard these cases and they were from Iran, there was a lot of confusion. I remember doing a live hit that night outside of the Jubilee Hospital here in Victoria, and we're like, how serious is this? And then to be at the legislature. So at the time, and part of what made COVID so challenging for us is my mother-in-law has had cancer. She's passed away from that. She was living with us. All of this made it extremely hard covering every day and living through this and being a high risk family, immunocompromised. But she was having her last round of cancer treatment in Bellingham in March of 2020. My wife and I were down there to support her through this. We came home. The cases were ramping up, and we got a note from our employer saying, uh, you need to isolate if you've been to the US within 14 days. These are going to be our work policies. And then an hour later, a note came out and said, actually, it's within 7 days of being in the US. And I had been 10 days since I'd been there. And I'm like, what do I do? And they're like, you can't be in the same room as Keith Baldry. Keith and you are going to be our COVID reporters. If you are in the same place as Keith and one of you tests positive, we lose both of you. So you have to go at 10 o'clock at night to the office, get all of the stuff you need. And we don't know when you're going to be allowed to be back in the office. And I don't think Keith and I were allowed to be in the same room as each other for almost a year.
Well,
And it was one of these things where it's like dramatic shifts on a very personal level, but also on a professional level too. And then, there are so many stories, but to sort of close the circle on elections, I never worked harder in my professional life than I did for that 2024 election. And
mm,
we the state of journalism is what it is. Global BC didn't put as many resources as we had historically. It was in essence just Keith and I covering that election. And there were days in Vancouver when I was at a conservative event in the morning, an NDP event in the afternoon, maybe flip it around, live hit at 5 and 6 o'clock, record things for 11, and then learning that map, the touch screen, which is Mike had the pleasure of getting to
Yeah,
use
yeah.
it. I even let him
I got
touch
to
the
use
screen.
it. That was great.
Um, but using that technology to show people, how their votes matter, to me was really important piece of what I got to experience as a journalist. And that election was incredibly consequential. Like the unfolding of BC Liberals to BC United gets linked into that election, but alone, that is a deeply profound moment as well. And again, I was on vacation when it happened, and Keith and I broke that story from me being on vacation driving between Prince Rupert and Terrace and like informing the public that Kevin Falcon had quit, and all summer I had refused to take time off because I was convinced Kevin Falco was going to quit. And then when I was confident enough, we decided to take the ferry from Hardy up to Rupert. And then it
Mhm.
happened while we were there. And it will be one of those things that will always stand out to me. But to see a legacy party
Mhm.
collapse outside of an election is unprecedented, as you guys know, and,
Mhm.
and was fascinating to watch unfold in real time.
Yes, over the past few weeks, we've been talking about presenting sponsor TELUS's new sovereign AI factory in Rimouski, Quebec, and what data sovereignty means for Canadians. Now, sovereignty doesn't mean going it alone. It means being strategic about partnerships so that Canadians have access to world-leading technology without having to compromise on control over their data. TELUS is proud to partner with NVIDIA, a global leader driving AI innovation. Using NVIDIA's cutting-edge GPU technology, the Rimouski facility will power computers that train and run advanced AI applications, processing massive amounts of data in record time, and paving the way for new breakthroughs that benefit Canadian businesses and researchers. While NVIDIA provides accelerated computing resources for AI workloads, all data storage, processing, and operations remain under Canadian jurisdiction. This is what TELUS means by sovereignty by design. It's TELUS's end-to-end control that creates a secure environment where businesses can build, train, and fine-tune AI solutions on Canadian data without compromising control. And as the first North American telecom to become an NVIDIA cloud partner, TELUS has access to the NVIDIA accelerated computing platform and collaboration with NVIDIA experts. By integrating NVIDIA AI technologies with TELUS's 100% Canadian-owned infrastructure, TELUS is helping control AI development within Canada's borders while giving Canadian innovators a competitive edge on the world stage. So, Canadian businesses get the best of both worlds, world-leading technology from NVIDIA and sovereign AI under Canadian jurisdiction, thanks to TELUS.
But to go back briefly to COVID, Richard, if my memory serves me, the COVID pandemic broke out in earnest right after the legislature had been entirely surrounded by
Yep.
demonstrators frustrated about the Canadian GasLink pipeline. And you
Yep.
were memorably shown being dragged by your arms up into, I don't know whether it was the West Annex or somewhere, one of the entrances to get back into your studio, I guess.
They weren't dragging me. I used a lot of leg power, Geoff, to get up that wall. And I had bagels with me because we had the AGM for the press gallery and I was running for re-election as president. So I needed to deliver. Richard Zussman always delivers, Geoff. And I got up that wall, and somebody was reminiscing about this today. I knocked one of the protesters, and I looked and I made sure she was okay before I jumped down and got into the building. You were right; it was on the west side of the building. So yeah, that protest was quite a series of events. Again, yes, we've seen significant
It
protests at
interrupted the
this
throne
building.
speech. Throne
Yeah, it
speech was
did, and
interrupted. Yeah.
forced the lieutenant governor to come through the secret tunnels that exist around the legislature. Like it was quite unprecedented how disruptive the protest was. We've seen big in size, but this was as disruptive, I think, as anyone remembers in terms of targeting different doors to prevent people from going in and out of the
It
building.
was very carefully planned. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I imagine another major moment for you reporting was uh, obviously not a surprise to Geoff, but a surprise to many in BC was when John Horgan decided to resign from office. And did
Yeah.
that one sneak up on you pretty quickly?
Geoff and I had many conversations during that time. Um, I think my gut always was that John was going to stay until the fall. I think the fact that he did it in June was surprising to me. I don't think I ever expected he was going to get to the next election or go a full term. I spent a lot of time with John Horgan, as both of you know. He's a special guy in my life, like he is in yours, Geoff. A remarkable human being, a remarkable premier. I don't need to, go through how incredible a man he is. British Columbians know that. But I think it was the evolution of the decision around the museum, grappling with his health, and then coming to the realization of I I want to be healthy for my next opportunity. And clearly that didn't happen for him, which is one of the great unfortunate moments that him and Ellie did not get to truly experience Germany as the ambassador. He deserved much better than he got because of that. But yeah, that was a politically surprising event due to its timing. And I think he was starting to prepare people for it in the language that he was using. But I think it was surprising that he did it when he did it.
Hmm. Well, Richard, let me ask you, switching gears here, in your reflections, what was your best interview ever in the last 10 years?
Yeah, like it's a good question. It's one of the things I haven't thought a whole lot about in terms of because what defines best? Like it was really special for me to get to interview Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre in back-to-back days leading up to the last election. I'm lucky that Global BC has an audience that matters to people. And uh, to see them back to back when one of them was going to be prime minister and the other wasn't, to me was really interesting politically. Um, you know what? My favorite interview was with my daughter, and I'm going to get emotional talking about this. During that 2020 COVID election, it was so unique. And these jobs are hard. The jobs that you guys had are hard. These journalism jobs are hard. They are all consuming. Politics matters in this province, and I take it very seriously. To try to explain the magnitude of what we are experiencing to my kids drew drawings for all 87
Hmm.
ridings, and we posted them behind me on my hits in the morning news. My favorite story I've done. And I interviewed my daughter about why she did it. And I think when you think about my favorite interview, I think that was it. It was
Great
sharing that
answer.
moment with Bailey about why our province matters. The symbols that matter. We drew Terry Fox, we drew Douglas firs, we drew orcas, but we also drew robots from a high school in Adrian Dix's riding that went to the World Championships. We drew Nanaimo bars in Nanaimo, samosas in Surrey, dim sum, like to reflect our cultures, our people, the things, and to talk to Bailey about it and see it through the mind of a then 10-year-old. I think that's my favorite interview when I think back of it. I got to interview a lot of people. I interviewed Prince William. I interviewed every prime minister that was sitting in office while I've been a journalist. I've interviewed all the premiers, but I think I'm going to give it to Bailey.
Awesome. Okay, well, here's some short snappers. So we'll give you a question and you just rip one off here. Okay.
Yep.
Hardest working MLA you've seen.
Adrian Dix.
Best MLA in an interview.
I'm worried I'm going to recency bias. I'm going to say Ravi Kahlon.
Okay. Funniest MLA.
Man, I'm skewing to one side and I need to get out of that one-sidedness. I honestly think Charlie Demers or no Charlie Demers, David Eby is the funniest MLA. I think he has a secret wit about him that most people don't see. I'm trying to think about one on the other side who I would define as funny.
It's got to be somebody as funny as a conservative.
There has to be.
It's got to be
I can't
somebody.
I can't think of it. I can't think of it.
Wow. No sense of humor, those guys. Most clippable mayor.
Well, I'm not going to say it because it's going to go to his head. I'm going to say Brenda Locke.
There you go.
And
Good.
Leonard Krog.
I was
How
hoping
about
there was a
Leonard Krog?
curveball. I
How
was
about
hoping there was a
Leonard Krog?
curveball.
Leonard Krog. Leonard Krog is the answer. Leonard Krog is the answer.
Really? Okay, good. Yeah.
Most of,
Clippable.
Yeah.
most effective opposition member.
Secretly, right now, Claire Rattay could be that. Eleanor Sturko. And then if you go back, I think, Adrian Dix was incredibly good at it. He had a lot of experience doing it. But yeah, I think right now Eleanor Sturko is probably the most effective opposition MLA.
Most impressive BC Liberal minister.
So I think I'm trying to get my brain back into Terry Lake. I would say it was Terry Lake.
Most impressive NDP minister.
Well, define impressive. I think Carol James.
Okay. Do you favor a 15-minute or a 30-minute question period?
15. I think they need to get rid of member statements and introductions.
Just boom. Yeah, in the old days, it was 15 minutes was just like all the energy went into those 15 minutes, and it was pretty awesome. Favorite dish in the legislative dining room?
The secret grilled cheese, but I eat there very rarely. I also don't mind the chowder.
Most underrated MLA in the legislature today?
This is a great question. I for sure it's a conservative, because they haven't had the opportunity to be rated yet, and I think there's a lot of them. I think I mentioned Claire Rattay already. I think she could be there. I think Scott McGuinness. It's that combination of the human touch and the policy ability, and I think those two conservatives could do. And I think Alia Warbus too. It has incredible potential to be an incredible representative for a community.
Most underrated reporter in the press gallery?
I think Alec Lazenby.
Vancouver Sun.
Yeah.
Finally,
Keith Baldry, maybe. I feel like Keith
Keith Baldry underrated? Come on.
I think he can finally break through at some point.
Just after his Lifetime Achievement Award at the Websters.
That bookshelf has risen as
that Webster will give him the confidence he's been missing to really strike out.
Yeah, I think you've got it, Geoff. I think somebody needs to tell him that. I think that's what he's really lacking, is the confidence.
If you could commission a statue on the grounds of the legislature, who would it be?
Well, John Horgan. But I have lots of ideas about statues. I think W.A.C. Bennett. But statues in politics, statues belong at sports stadiums. I think the Canucks need to build stadiums for the Sedins. I think the Blue Jays need to build a stadium for Joe Carter. I think
a statue, you mean? Yeah.
I think a statue, but I think statues for politicians are passe.
No statue of Baldry then?
Well, we'll see. I think he needs to send his COVID notebooks to the Royal BC Museum. We have to start there first.
Am I missing any short snappers, Geoff? Do you have any on the tip of your tongue?
Oh, you're catching me by surprise. I don't
My
know,
favorite chief of staff to a premier.
Who are you?
That's
But in your time there, looking around at your peers in the gallery, who would you say? Maybe it's unfair to pick one out, but there's who do you think maybe is the most underrated in that group? Or did we do that with?
Yeah, like underrated.
You said Lazenby, but I mean, are there others that should have wider audiences? I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I think that's hard to tell. I think Mark Page is talented at Black Press. I think Shannon Waters is doing important work. The gallery's getting smaller and smaller, Geoff. So it's hard. Those that are great get opportunities. Social media has allowed that. Sharing online has allowed that. So there are opportunities for those out there. But I think we need to give everyone. It's not just the big guys anymore that matter. I think finding lots of opportunities is important for all types of journalists in the province.
Yeah, maybe I should have asked what's the most underrated publication, because we talked about the journalists, but you're right. There's a crop of small web-based organizations and that kind of thing now.
Yeah, and I think social media gives them a platform, but it's still hard to compete with the big guys. People's routines are so established when it comes to journalism. Social media has had an impact on that, but really it is hard to break through in a saturated marketplace that exists right now.
What's the biggest change you've seen in the business since you came to the legislature? Because it seems it's been evolving at breakneck speed recently.
Yeah. So it's obviously the impact of social media has changed things. The way politicians communicate has changed things. Like social media has largely evolved to allow people to directly speak to the public. They don't need to go through the traditional media that they have historically. So I think that is by far the singular change. And that's created disconnection in the media landscape. and the way that politicians communicate has evolved because of that ability to get directly to people through social media accounts rather than the filter that is the traditional media.
Well, Richard, you've had a good run, and we're going to miss you on the nightly news. Any final valedictory remarks before we let you go?
Yeah, like journalism has never been more important than it is now. I am leaving to see what else is out there for me in the world, not because of my deep commitment to journalism and the importance that it has with our democracy. Uh, it is a tough time for journalism. The way that the advertising landscape has evolved and changed has made it very difficult to make money. And producing quality news costs a lot of money. And with the emergence of podcasts like this one, the emergence of social media, the emergence of online, everybody is fighting for that piece of that pie for advertising, and it makes it harder and harder for everyone. But it's important to have reflective voices all across the spectrum that offer different opinions, thoughts. So I'm leaving at a time where there's a lot of work to be done, but I'm also leaving, often in this building, you're told by the voters it's time for you to go. As a journalist, I get to pick when I'm leaving, and I'm leaving at a time where I'm happy to leave. It's important at times for these positions to have some renewal, and I'm excited to see who comes next after me and the work that my colleagues will continue to do. And it was a thrill to do it. Like some of the stories we got to share today, there's so many more. The people I got to meet, it's been pretty incredible career. I think it's fitting. There's some sort of gathering going on outside the legislature. We've heard a lot of drums echoing in this place for a long time. So there's something sort of, again, full circle about hearing the sort of sounds of the indigenous drums as you and I finish up here. And so, yeah, it's been a remarkable career. It's been fun. I've appreciated the work you guys have done. I've always loved coming on. I hope to maybe cash in some of my frequent traveler points and be a guest sometime down the road, but we will see what the future brings.
Well, we're not sure where to find you because I think the only place you're present these days is on Blue Sky, and what the hell is that, anyways?
No, the only place I'm really present is the Victoria Curling Club. But the way that Twitter's evolved, Elon Musk wants to destroy traditional journalism. And by traditional journalists going on there and providing content for free, it gives him an ability to destroy the industry. And that's why I've, in essence, not used it. I may come back to it one day. I may try to figure out how to use some of these other social media sites. It wasn't about Blue Sky. It was about saying, I know that I drive traffic to Twitter, to X. I know people look for my content there.
Mhm.
I'm not going to give the satisfaction to Elon Musk that traditional journalists are in essence giving away their content for free there to bolster their own platform while he attempts to destroy traditional journalism. But I will find places that you can find me. I know it's now important more than ever to communicate to people. Like I'm just a cog in a big wheel at Global BC, but I also understand that my work has had an impact on people. So I want to make it as easy for them to find me as possible. If that means going back to X, we'll see. I'd be reluctant, but there'll be other places, hopefully, that people will be able to find me.
I just want to squeeze in one more question before you go. So you're not going to be here, but put on your news editor hat for a moment.
Yeah.
And give our listeners a sense of what you think are the developing or emerging stories that if you were staying in the job, you would be pursuing or keeping an eye on.
Yeah. So we're on the tip of the iceberg of a few massive ones, Geoff, and the emergence of involuntary care, street disorder. How do we care for people in a humane way and make sure they're not dying of toxic drugs to ensure that they have the best opportunities to create a life for themselves? And what does that mean about the future facilities like Riverview? That is going to continue to be a massively important issue. The same with the Cowichan Tribes decision. What does this mean for title? What does this mean for negotiations? What does this mean for private property? And these are very complicated legal rulings that the public only can understand in fragments. And that's what's going to be challenging for journalists moving forward, is giving people the sense of not this big fear that the First Nations are trying to steal people's private property. I do not believe that's the case in any way. But there needs to be an articulation from politicians through journalists to say, this is how we're protecting private property rights at the same time being respectful and working with First Nations. And then clearly, like, this has been a long-standing issue, but our healthcare system is on the brink and has been for a while. You know this, Geoff, and nurses are feeling the pressure working inside of the system. And at the same time, our population is aging and relying heavily on care in the system. Like, these are just the core tenets. Like, people count on government to provide core services to ensure that, you own a home, it's your home, that you can afford to buy groceries, to put food on the table, to have a good life with your kids, to get healthcare when you need it, to count on the education system. And clearly the continued pressure, that pendulum of the immigration issue. How do we make sure that the right people are working in our communities? Government has a responsibility here to make sure that we can continue to build the homes people actually want to buy, to address those affordability crises, to do the work in the fields, to get our BC products to market. Like, these are big, complicated issues. You both know this, doing the jobs you've done. They were easy issues, they already would have been solved. But I know I picked like the big four, but like, really, Geoff, I think we're tip of the iceberg for these big issues that are going to keep putting pressure on government, and in turn journalists, to better articulate and to continue to articulate to the public why these issues matter, and how can we find solutions for all of us to address them.
Mhm.
All right. Well, Richard, good luck.
Thanks, Mike.
We'll see you on the other side.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming back to Hotel Pacifico, and I'm sure we haven't seen the last of you here.
I hope I can get the late checkout. Thank you guys always. Thanks to all of you. It has been deeply appreciative being on this. It's been I love this format, and I really appreciate all the time that the both of you have given me, not just on the podcast, but in your previous careers working here at the legislature. You two are obviously excellent at what you do, and I'm deeply appreciative of the work both of you do.
Thanks, Richard.
All the best, Richard.
When it comes to shipping, the word bunkering might sound like something out of a war movie. In reality, it simply means fueling a ship, and for more than a century that fuel has been heavy oil or diesel. But there's a better option. LNG, liquefied natural gas, is natural gas cooled until it becomes a liquid. In this form, it's compact enough to fuel large ships. Earlier this year, BC made history. The Silver Nova, a state-of-the-art cruise ship, became the first vessel bunkered with LNG in Vancouver, supplied by FortisBC's Tilbury facility in Delta. FortisBC isn't new to this. Riding on a ferry between Tsawwassen and Victoria, good chance that ferry is running on LNG provided by FortisBC. There are 10 marine vessels that are fueled with LNG, 6 for BC ferries and 4 with Seaspan. It's part of a growing global shift to lower emission shipping. They've safely completed more than 78,000 LNG bunkering operations for customers here in BC. These examples show what's possible right here in Vancouver. But here's the challenge. Unless Canada builds the infrastructure, we risk falling behind ports in the US or Asia that are already fueling LNG-powered vessels. Without infrastructure to support these larger vessels, Canada could miss out on the economic and environmental benefits of becoming a global LNG fueling hub. The Tilbury facility has an advantage. It produces some of the lowest carbon intensity LNG in the world, thanks to hydroelectricity produced in BC. Expanding that capacity would not only support shipping here at home, but it would also put Canada on the map as a leader in the international transition to lower carbon marine fuels. Because shipping isn't just about moving people and goods, it's about moving them responsibly. And the opportunity is at our doorstep. FortisBC, energy for a better BC and a better podcast.
Well, we're back in the strategy suite. We've got Carlie Pochynok with us today. Carlie, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, and tough act to follow putting me on after Richard Zussman, so I'll do my best.
I'm sure you'd be more than capable. You patrolled the hallways of the legislature back in the day, so you're bringing your own experience here to the strategy suite.
I did, yeah.
You're opposition and government too, were you?
I was, yeah, in both. I was government in Alberta, government for a quick minute in BC, and then finished it off with a good stint in opposition, leaving in 2021, which was quite a long time ago in political years. So I'm glad to be back to talk
4
about
years
it.
is a lifetime. Yeah,
I know.
no kidding. Well, first of all, a little report from me on Japan is that on the flight over last week, wouldn't you know it, I had a policy, Jeff, that when I was in the Premier's office, I didn't go on trade missions because I thought, you know, there's work to be done at home, and everyone else wants to go on trade missions, and I never went. So I never made it to Asia on a trade mission. Well, poor me, right? Well, my first trip to Tokyo, I end up on the plane. That's the trade mission for the BC forestry effort. And so as I'm wandering up the aisle of the plane, who's there? Ravi Parmar. So, and I'd like to report to our listeners that Minister Parmar flies economy. So there you go. So I'm glad to see he wasn't in the pod, stretched out, with his glass of wine and everything like that. No, he was gutting it out with me in economy. So good for you, Minister Parmar.
That's not a short flight.
Yeah, and I like the fact that they're trying to save a little bit of money someplace. That's good news. So, anyways, they were in Japan to meet with customers there, and I think Kofi was there, as Kim Hackstead and Kofi was there. A lot of companies were there, and then I think a number of them were heading over to Korea. So trying to make things happen for BC's beleaguered forest industry. It's
They no longer make the third leg to China.
I
That
guess not.
stopped.
Yeah,
That stopped suddenly just after the two Michaels were arrested.
yeah, yeah. Well, I certainly wouldn't want to be the third.
No.
Um, so, anyways, there's my report from Japan for what it's worth. The minister flies economy. Um, so Monday there was a federal budget vote, and it passed, I think, 170 to 168. Um, I watched a bit of the coverage on various national networks, and they were breathlessly reporting this cliffhanger vote. But was it ever in doubt? Do you think there was any chance the NDP were going to plunge, or let alone the Conservatives, plunge plunge the country into an election? Carly, what do you think?
It just a quick aside, when I was, kind of watching the vote drama happening, it brought me back to 2017, where there was that really, really slim BC Liberal majority before the confidence vote. And
Mm.
we practiced. There were actual, well, you remember, there were dress rehearsals of how fast you're getting into that chamber when the bells ring on votes of confidence. So I was very surprised to see, you know, so to answer your question, no, I think that the Liberal government probably pulled out all of the stops and all of the behind the scenes conversations and all of the posturing to make sure that that wouldn't happen. But to see it so close, and then to see the communications around it just a little bit clunky, was interesting to me, because it's national news. It's such a huge deal and everyone's paying attention. So it was interesting to see.
What do you think, Jeff? Did
Well,
did the
I
NDP
think
miss an
that
opportunity to force an election?
no, not miss an opportunity, but there was a mishandling, I think, of this by the government, in the sense that the budget included specific gifts to NDP MPs, like in Don Davies' case, the proposal to do a Filipino community center right in his riding, when I don't think it's completely resolved when and where there will be a Filipino community center, but there will be one. It was a sort of a naked handout to him to draw him into a yes vote without any discussion. There hadn't been any discussion really between the government and the opposition parties about what might make them support a budget in policy terms. And I don't know if that ever actually happened. So when push came to shove, for a whole set of reasons, I think all of the parties except for the Bloc, and I'm not sure, I don't follow them, so I'm not sure how much happened there, found their own way to make sure that it passed. So the couple of Conservatives one was ill. So there was a couple of Conservatives not present. Elizabeth May took an answer to a question
Well,
period is enough.
was there a Conservative they didn't vote because they were ill? Because they could vote electronically.
Yeah, well, there were two. Jenner, the guy who's quitting, and a second one did not vote, and I'm not sure of the exact reasons.
Shannon Stubbs, yeah, her office had put out a statement saying that she had like a surgery or something like that that did not permit her to participate in that
Oh, I see.
vote.
because of the
So Elizabeth
sedative or
May
something.
was hurling her copy of the budget on the floor, but then took an answer from
Yeah,
the prime minister as enough to reassure her. So they
yeah.
muddled through, but it wasn't beautifully executed by the government. It was really clear from the media coverage that all day people were wondering if there could be a bad car crash here and an
Elizabeth May
election that
gets
actually nobody wanted.
way too much airtime, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Anyways, well, anyways, off they go, until the next confidence vote. But it doesn't look like we're going to see an election anytime soon. Geoff, you were at the NDP convention last weekend. What did you find out there?
Well, it was a good convention for Premier Eby because he was able to get an 83% vote not to have a leadership review. It was pretty commonplace view among a lot of NDP watchers and insiders that he wouldn't have fared so well if the vote had been held in September, for example. There was a lot of unhappiness. Some of it was quite visible in the party at the end of the summer, which was triggered in part by some of his comments or crystallized by comments he made in his very first scrum when he came back. You may recall he demanded an end to the temporary foreign worker program, claiming that temporary foreign workers were filling up the food banks or filling up the homeless shelters and consuming food at the food banks. And this outraged a lot of NDP rank and file members and some senior people who, for the first time, went public with their frustrations. But also there was the public service strike. There was anger in the Indigenous community over comments he made about the Cowichan decision. And a ton of work was done between I would say mid-September and Saturday to secure that outcome, including a wave of very important announcements, some of which the BC government did, some of which were probably coincidental, but very important from a BC standpoint by the Prime Minister, supporting the transmission line and other key projects, all of which contributed to a vote right after his speech, which was lengthy and full of all kinds of touches on NDP history and legacy and reflections on premiers who'd gone before, all the way back to Dave Barrett through to John Horgan, even mentioning Glenn Clark's administration and Mike Harcourt. So he really reconnected with the party, and it worked. Now we're hearing really that the government has definitively shifted gears to the economy. And a lot of issues that were just mentioned by Richard Zussman, for example, did not appear at all in his convention speech. There was no discussion of mental health and addiction, nothing about the opioid crisis, and barely a mention of crime. So what's really on
a
the
bit
agenda?
Surprising, isn't it, that the opioids crisis gets so little mentioned?
I was surprised, and even the extortion one. The extortion conversations I had with a number of MLAs, especially from Surrey, and this is a bipartisan view, is that the extortion crisis in Surrey is of a character and nature that we haven't seen before. It's a very, very dangerous and very hard to manage crime crisis that is requiring a tremendous amount of resources and attention. And as we all know, the road to victory electorally in BC goes at least partway through Surrey. And this is a Surrey issue that's not going to be resolved by a medical school or a hospital. This is a really profound problem that goes right into the community and is causing a tremendous amount of anxiety. So I was surprised it was missed.
Carlie, what did you take away from the NDP convention? Watching from afar, I imagine.
I took away many deep thoughts. Look, I did not get into the minutia of the policy pieces. I'm not going to pretend that I did, but conventions are so difficult for leaders because talking to your party base is more difficult than door knocking in the most difficult community, because those are the people that are so personally invested and fundamentally aligned with your party and your policies, that they're going to come out on a weekend and spend their free time discussing it. And so I think looking at the numbers and looking at the conversations that were had, I mean, personally, I'm happy to see the government going in a more economy focused direction. I do think that, I think everyone knows I'm an Albertan transplant to BC. It's been 10 years now, but I do think that the social issues here are real. And, I think that the government has a big role to play in that, but I think also the economy piece is linked to that. And so it was good to hear, not at the convention, but leading up to the convention and in the days following, the just a little bit of a shift of focus. That I'm sorry, my my NDP inner working knowledge was not as detailed as Geoff. So thanks, Geoff, for carrying the carrying the torch there.
Well, I guess the first issue, which we were talking about in the weeks leading up to the convention, was the leadership review. So, the 82.3% or whatever it is that he got, gets a job done. It's not, neither bad nor great. It is adequate. So no nasty surprise there. I put it in the context of Rustad's 71%. And it's obviously better than that, but it's not that much better. Like it's
Well, another contextual point, Mike, is that after John Horgan won the majority in 2020, he
yeah,
went to a leadership review vote like this, and he also got 83% or 82,
yeah.
maybe one point more. It's a free swing at the leader by anybody who's got a beef, and that's why it's a bit hard to manage. But I think part of the challenge for the premier is that he's not out of the woods in terms of the politics of the province. There's still the budget to come,
Yeah.
and I think what we've been seeing is that as the province tries to squeeze down spending, very important programs to groups that everybody would feel sympathetic to are being impacted. Quite an interesting story in the Tyee about a loss of funding by an important organization in the deaf community. And the spokesperson for it is Nigel. His last name I can't remember, but he did all the American Sign Language signing during the
Oh, yeah.
during the pandemic. So he's a very familiar face to British Columbians. But this is a small program, critically important to 500 people, and it's going down. Likewise, the story in the Globe and Mail the other day by I forget the writer, but the risk of closing a lot of long-term care beds as COVID-related special funding runs out. Each of these is a very negative story. The public's not going to be that interested in the overarching budget narrative. And none of that conversation, of course, occurred on the floor now. It's still to come. So there's a lot of big challenges ahead of the government. And I think the other thing is that the projects that were promised both by the provincial government and by the federal government are important projects, and some of them are well advanced, but they're not going to produce any fundamental change in BC's economy in the next 2 years or 3 years.
Well, as I say, I mean, for this hurdle, they jumped over the hurdle, right? The convention can be probably deemed a success. I would just say, as a contrarian, that the overall number of delegates that was there, that was reported, I think 740, is kind of like a meh. Like I've been to provincial conventions with over 1,000. So, it's not a terrible turnout, but it doesn't speak to me that it's super great either. So I would just say, the party can go up or it can go down in the next year. And if I don't think it's got a lot of margin for, for going backwards. Like I think the difference between a 740 person convention and a 500 person convention's, doesn't seem like a lot of people, but that would actually be, not a great sign for them, right? So what am I
We didn't
saying
have
here?
that.
What am I trying to
We-
say?
we-
What I'm trying to say is, I'm talking to myself, obviously. Is that
Well,
I think
there's
it just felt a bit average to me, and I think they got through it, and they're in government, and they're 8 years in, and
Well, I'm kind of
they're
with Carlie on
sustained.
this. If you get through a convention with no big problem, that's huge.
Yeah, no, I
I
agree. I
just
agree. I just don't feel like it's that deep. Is
Do you think
I guess what I'm
also,
trying to say.
do you think also with conventions, though, like you talk about the numbers, and you probably want to move on, but it's also expensive. Like it's really
Yeah,
expensive to get there, to
Mhm.
stay in Victoria, to like it is fundamentally like when I used to go to conventions, like we were in our 20s, we would stay floor to a hotel room, and you know what I mean, and carpool down. That was 100 years ago. People are not doing that now. So do you think that parties like are probably look in a, in a beneficial way to look at how they do conventions differently in the future, taking into consideration how expensive everything is, and in BC specifically, how difficult it is for people who aren't in the Lower Mainland to get to Vancouver or Victoria to participate.
Or you could be like
I
BC
think that's a
United
good
and not
point.
have conventions. So,
So one last thing, I think, before we get on to the economy, because we just have to get this point in there. It wasn't it was obvious that the labor movement was feeling better about the government, but it was pretty clear both the private sector and public sector unions were not feeling good about the government. They're feeling okay with the government, and they didn't throw EB under the bus, but he's got to continue doing the kind of intensive work that was done in the run up to the election to maintain that relationship. It's even more dicey with First Nations, and he's committed to reconciliation. He kept saying that, but he has to mend his relationship with the First Nations leadership gathering if he's going to be able to advance, and the people they represent, if he's going to be able to advance a lot of these economic projects. So the two groups that were the focus of a lot of attention are also critical to the economic agenda. And I think it's managing that relationship in the future, which is going to be very challenging, that is going to pose take up a lot of his time.
okay. Well, let's talk about the economy. We've earlier this week, the government released its Look West economic strategy, which I've yet to read. Um, and also late last week, Prime Minister was in Prince Rupert announcing the latest tranche of major projects, and which includes the Silisms LNG project and the North Coast Transmission Line. So a lot of talk about projects, and the provincial Look West plan has a lot of talk about projects too. So certainly since Trump came to office and the tariff dispute, that's changed a lot of thinking. It seems like that approach is broadly supported in the public. It seems like there's a lot of momentum behind these big natural resource projects. Geoff, what do you make of it? Kind of the province's approach and its plan that they put out this week.
Well, I haven't had a chance to read it closely either, but I think it demonstrates a real commitment at the cabinet level to align all of their efforts on that front. What'll that mean in specific ministries and so on? I'm not sure. The response from the business community was pretty lukewarm. That's fine, that's great. We love to see a plan, but we've seen lots of them in the past. Uh,
Mhm.
and I think that it gives Ravi Kahlon, who's the Minister of Jobs and Economic Development, a bigger stick to wave in the cabinet discussions about what priorities could or should be. There was an interesting subtext too, which was the Premier's announcement that he wants the province now to take equity positions in some of these projects. That was a big part of the scrum afterwards. Reporters were very troubled by that. I don't see that as a major departure, frankly. There's a lot of government participation, although not as a shareholder often, but maybe there should be more. Um, but the press gallery was pretty anxious and nervous about that in the scrum. We'll see. I think these projects will go ahead. Whether they have the impact politically that the premier hopes is another question. And I think he's counting on the fight with Trump and the need to shift the economy as being kind of a silver bullet for the government to manage through the other problems that we've mentioned, the opioid crisis and crime and so on, that are really intractable and hard to resolve.
Carly, what do you think of the Prime Minister's latest announcements and how the province has kind of fallen into the same line with him?
I'm thrilled personally. I love action. I love to hear things that don't sound like in 10 years from now, this is going to happen. We understand horizon planning. We all know governments have to plan for the long term, but the reality of it is people want to know what's happening now. Like they need to know, how is this going to impact me in the near future? They need to feel something, they need to see something. All they've felt and seen and heard in the last year is how bad things are, how Trump's coming for us, how everything's more expensive. And so, when you were saying you hadn't read the Look West plan front to back, I was going to make a joke that I have, because it looks like all the other 10-year plans that governments put out they're great. They make sense. Like, of course, we need them. They're essential. But I think also from a communications and relation standpoint to humans, you need to look at what else are we saying to people? What hope are we giving people, not in 2035, but like 2026, 2027, what's going to happen? And so I think the Prime Minister's fast tracking and urgency, and like, we're going to do this within 2 years, we're going to see shovels in the ground. That's great. But I feel like, especially now, people are still going to say and still going to be hesitant to buy into it until they actually see a shovel in the ground and they actually see some flag people on the street, with all of these economic great plans that are in the works. So I'm hoping, I'm hopeful. I'm still hopeful. I'm a Canadian. I think we can get it done. British Columbians get things done. So, but when? Hopefully soon.
Yeah, I'm a little, I mean, I think it's good. I mean, I think the tone changes in the last year has been great in terms of government showing more political will to support these projects, which we need for the economy, for jobs, and for the deficit. I'll say it again. But it does strike me as a bit odd that we designate these major projects because our own system of approvals is so cumbersome that we have to end run our own process by giving them special status. So, I mean, in the short run, yes, let's do it. Let's just get it done. But by God, in the longer run, let's not make it hard for everybody. Like, who are the poor guys, the poor slobs who've got projects that aren't fast tracked, that are stuck in the mud and mired in the intricacies of the EA process with no one, giving them the attention that they need to get their projects unstuck. So that's got to be looked at, but I guess that's for a rainy day right now. So what do we expect, Carlie, in the final weeks of the BC legislative sitting? There's, I think, 3 weeks, counting this week, left. They're wrapping up this year in early December. Do you expect any fireworks?
I was hoping, can I be honest? I was hoping we wouldn't have time for this because I couldn't tell you. This has been the most
Yeah.
boring session. I don't, there's, I feel like this is such an opportunity for government to be out there, to be bold, to be communicating with people on the regular. And I have not felt that as somebody I'm 4 years out, so 40 years out, same. I'm not as in it as my colleagues and friends. And so I feel like, as that kind of target audience who's aware but not in it, like I haven't seen or heard of anything specific that I could speak to that would the fireworks would be that it's over, and hopefully something more exciting comes in the new year with a budget that brings some immediacy, and ideally helps move us past the Trump conversation, not move past the Trump conversation, but not be continually following it and reacting to it. So sorry, I wish I had more detail digging into Bill 27.
Well, it's been pretty sleepy so
I
far.
don't.
I mean,
Okay,
I think
good. Thank you for
the
validating.
spring sitting had, I think, a little bit more spice.
It
But
was a
what do you
little bit
think?
spicier.
What do you think, Geoff?
It wasn't a successful session because some of the key bills that they brought in to speed up projects, for example, ran into huge opposition from First Nations in particular. So the only, I think the centerpiece this time is the legislation required to implement the Northwest transmission line and make sure that it goes ahead. So there's been I'm not even sure why legislation is required. To your point, Mike, why do we need an extra law to do something we've really decided we really want to do? But some of the other bills are notably, I would say small caliber. One about daycare, for example, which the Premier reports, points to quite a bit, simply enables school boards to deliver childcare, which I didn't think, required a law. There's a new bill which is an echo of Bill 12, which caused a huge ruckus. The Bill 12 in its larger form was going to give the government a pretty wide open field to go after anybody who they believed was causing health harms in the way that they did for tobacco and for opioid opioids. So the general bill has now been brought down to a bill that would basically focus on vaping products. But these are not going to stir up a lot of conversation at the pub on Friday night, I don't think. And the premier was at pains to make the major one about transmission line a confidence matter in his mind. So I think all we got left to see here is whether or not there is a struggle to pass that bill, because the Conservatives have said they oppose it. You've told me that there's good reasons to oppose it, Mike. I don't understand them. But anyway, we'll see how serious they are about it.
Well, I said they had their reasons.
Well, you did a good
But
job of articulating that point of view, but
well, I think
still don't get it.
well, I think what Rustad's response to his response to this in the media yesterday, the Look West plan, is that it all sounds fine and dandy to get these major projects going, but BC doesn't have the electricity to supply them. And Rustad is saying we should be using gas more instead of electricity because we don't have enough electricity. I think that is the crux of his argument.
Mhm.
So he's saying we don't need to build a transmission line to the north coast. We can just build gas generation instead, and that's how we can power these projects. Is I understand to be his argument. So, anyways, that's just to further explain to you, Geoff. We
Okay.
can have a weekly segment explaining Rustad.
But if I step back a bit, and I don't think Carlie missed anything. I think she exercised superior judgment in ignoring the rather uninteresting stuff that was happening at the legislature, with the possible exception of the transmission bill. But the last year since the election has been much kinder to David Eby, in spite of the difficulties the government had, than it was to John Rustad. On the anniversary of the provincial election, David Eby's there. He's got a strong mandate from his convention. The NDP financial secretary, Karen Cooling, reported that they're fully funded. They have no debt. On the other side of the room, there's John Rustad insisting that he should stay as leader, even though constituencies are petitioning him to hit the road. He's lost five of his MLAs, one of whom he had to expel, who was just lauded by Richard Zussman as the most effective opposition member, Eleanor Sturko. So it's, as we head towards Christmas and the end of the session, very different. I don't think either party can say, wow, that was a great year we had, and we can't wait to get at it in the coming months. It hasn't been great, but if I was going to pick a position to be in, I'd much rather be in David Eby's spot right now than in John Rustad's for all kinds of reasons.
Sounds exactly how the BC Liberals felt around 2015. Seriously. Lots of money, seemed like an unassailable position, opposition in the doldrums. You were there or saw it
Well,
close.
no, and we've talked several times about
what a difference a year makes, right?
Huge potholes ahead.
But that, I mean, don't get me wrong, things will get a lot worse for the BC Conservatives. But they're hanging in there in the polls.
Oh, so is Eby,
Yeah, so is Eby, but it's just like, it's not like it's a 15-point gap, right?
No.
It is, I've said before, show me the riding that the Conservatives lose in the next election that they hold today, that they won the last time. Show me the riding that they would lose this time. It's hard to find many, So I think the map is fairly entrenched, and unless something breaks the formula, like if the NDP can break through and claw back Surrey and some seats south of the Fraser, that could change the formula. Or if they find a way to win seats in the interior again, that could change the formula. Conversely, if the Conservatives can get their act together and win in seats where the BC Liberals used to win, like on the North Shore, and get a few more in the Burnaby Coquitlam area, then that could give them government. So I'm of the school that, yes, I think Eby should be happy with this last year. Yes, the Conservatives have a lot to reflect on, but it's still right there. Let alone what the center of the spectrum is going to do, and the BC Liberal refugees that don't feel like they have a home at all. So
it's a team sport. I think the convention, I think that's what conventions show, just to bring it back to what we started with. Politics is a team sport. It doesn't work if you're participating to further your own opinions or your own beliefs, you're representing X amount of, hundreds of thousands of people that live in your riding and millions of people if you want to be leader. So
Yeah.
I think it comes back to, that's what's gonna, who's the better team player, who's the better team leader, and that's what's gonna shrink that gap for sure.
Well said. Well, Carlie, you know all about the mini bar. So I hope you brought your game here to either raise a glass or take a shot this week.
I'm gonna raise a glass too, and I'm not just saying this. So Richard, don't roll your eyes. To Richard Zussman, I think changing careers and making a big step away from something that you know and you love to take a risk and to we all do it, but not in the public eye like that. And so I think I'm excited for him, and I know, even I was not as high. I'm not high profile at all, but even when I left politics, like it was really hard. You kind of you mourn it a little bit. So so cheers to him for making that really cool decision and to a great 20 years as a political journalist. So cheers to Richard.
All right. Geoff?
Well, maybe should think this over further, but I'm going to just go with my gut on this. I'm going to raise a glass to the incoming president of the NDP, Aman Singh, and a big slate that he put together, because one of the least appreciated jobs in politics probably is sitting on the leadership body of the party while all of the fun, glory, controversy, and drama happens over at the government or in the legislature or at the elected level. And the NDP has been blessed in the last few years, in my opinion, by a superior group of activists who have a lot of, they're diverse, they have a very, very broad skill set, and they take the work very seriously. So that's helped the NDP through some tough times and some risky propositions. So thanks to Aman Singh, he was the MLA for Richmond, Queensborough till the last election, but he put together a very good crew, and I think he'll do a good job. So all the best to him.
Well, he managed to end Jas Johal's political career the first time he ran. So
that's right, yeah.
And
Jas went on to
at least temporarily, anyways. Jas
was sort of a Richard Zussman in reverse.
He'll be back.
Now, does the NDP party president attend caucus meetings?
No,
because that used to be the case, I think.
Well, they come periodically to report on stuff in the party, but it's a defined moment. It's not like an ex officio position. Yeah.
Yeah, I always thought it was a good idea to have a party president attend caucus meetings, be the voice of the party members, as opposed to just the elected guys. But
they come from time to time. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to raise a glass to my old friend Bruce Young, who, while I was away last week, was honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award by the Public Affairs Association of Canada. Bruce, in addition to his political work over the years, is a longtime consultant, and is recognized for his body of work. Bruce, congratulations, and I hope you got a heaping serving of frizzled ham as part of your celebration. Well, thank you, Carlie, for stopping by Hotel Pacifico. Thanks to Richard Zussman for returning to Hotel Pacifico this week as well. Thanks to our sponsors for allowing us to bring this episode to you for free. See you next week. BC, you can never leave.